I'd like to call the March 28th Subcommittee Teaching and Learning meeting to order. Thank you all. We're going to turn it right over this way.
Thank you very much. So for tonight's agenda, we're going to give a little update on our Girls Rising initiative that has started this year, and a little bit on the Advanced Pathways update, just an update to keep you apprised. And then Ed and Erin are going to co-present with me about the digital literacy computer science standards. Okay, so this is a fun update to give you. So you've heard, or some of you have heard us present on the Girl Rising unit that Elise Higgins Steele has started and caught the attention of the filmmaker by the things that she was doing with her kids, and she created a blog. And that brought Casey Friedman Jennings to our district, and she, on our behalf, applied for a Newman's Own grant. And so we got year 2 of that particular Girl Rising unit that tied specifically to the book and to the documentary. And then Dr. D and I were talking about, and we were hearing from the other principals and what was going on in the other schools, particularly around after-school extracurricular programs. And so we decided to see what would happen if we created a Quincy Public School Girls Rising initiative. And the idea is that it's to empower our students, our female students, through participation in activities that focus on being an agent of change. And that being an agent of change can be as small or as big as the group wants to go, or that's age appropriate. And with our community service, we already have a lot of this already going on, but when we were looking at the after-school programs, we were wondering about some of those students who weren't being pulled into either athletics or drama. There certainly is a lot to get involved in, but this was just another way we wanted to see where we go with this. And so whatever group sort of the seed that takes place at each school, we just ask that this particular club or after-school activity focuses on a real-world global issue. The kids are encouraged to think globally, but then act locally. So we want them to be a global citizen, but then we want them to look at their own community and see, at their age, what they can do within their power. And of course, we want the group to do an authentic activity that emphasizes research to build awareness, communication skills, and leadership skills. And this is just a slide that I took from another presentation, but it just gives you a sense of all the different attributes that you can pull into a project like this. And there is an arrow up there that says inclusive, not exclusive. Boys are allowed. We're just trying this initiative out to make sure. We first started thinking STEM. How do we make sure that we pull our female students in towards STEM? And then the teachers, the principals, they started coming up with so many interesting ideas that it became clear that we can get these leadership and STEM characteristics in almost any activity that we put in front of them. So I'd like to just share a few of them with you. Let's do this one. I can't read that everyone. There we go. Okay, new this year, Lincoln Hancock Swim Club for girls, for 4th grade girls. So we've got the pool. There are times when it's not being used, and we had a super ambitious Marissa Forrester, who is one of the swim coaches. She said, what can I do to help get kids in the pool? And so we coupled her interest with Lincoln Hancock, which is one of our high-need schools, Title I schools. We have a lot of kids who are looking for some real meaningful things to do after school, or that are available to do that. And so this was a really neat collaboration with 3 teachers, Keith and myself, with the blessing from Dr. D, and Ruth Whitmer. And it was sort of a 2-tiered approach. We had lunch, but then we also had, very important, we wanted to feed them, but we also had a curriculum component, which was around wellness and leadership traits. In fact, the 2 teachers took the effective traits of a successful teenager, broke it down for an elementary age. And so they talked about habits of mind of a successful, healthy 4th grader. And so the kids did, they worked for about an hour maybe an hour, maybe a little more than an hour, and they were working on programs that had to do with innovations in swimming. So what technology is now being used to help enhance swimming professionals or disabled folks who want to get in the pool and swim. So they actually Skyped with a swim coach, and they actually met with 2 para-swimmers who practice at the Quincy YMCA. So this whole idea of, you know, what's local to us, the pool, learning to swim, but then what can we learn about that enhances our thinking. And so we've just got some great pictures up there. Right at the top in the middle, that's Cece. She's demonstrating the storyboard that they worked on throughout the 7 weeks in their curriculum part. And in the middle are the 7 habits of a successful young woman. And they did a lot. Clearly, not only was swimming a favorite of the group, but also animals, love of animals. And so they used their storyboards to tell a story of themselves. They shared it with there were 20 girls. They shared it with each other. They gave feedback, both oral and written feedback on the presentations. And they also shared it with parents and teachers. So it was a wonderful culminating activity. Then you can see that they're in the pool. In the top right hand, girls rule the pool is what the towel says. And there was no expectation when they signed up. Mrs. Whitmer, Mrs. Loftus, and the teachers, when they went out seeking girls for this particular club, they could swim or maybe had no swimming. And Marisa Forrester with 2 lifeguards, thank you, Dr. D, with 2 lifeguards on duty, she was able to work with these girls, and it was just completely joyful. In the bottom left hand, she would do things that looked very much like a swim class, and then she would give them free time, but then before they could leave their pool, it was sort of an exit ticket where they got in their circle and they had to demonstrate one of the swimming skills that they had learned. So I got to see somebody floating on their back for the first time. I saw some great front strokes. I saw some underwater diving. And then there are children who are still just sort of treading in the water, but they all had smiles on their faces. It was fantastic. In the bottom right, some of them have their storyboards, and they have a flower and a certificate from their teachers for completing the program. So that was Rita Barry, Mary Kay White, who are Lincoln Hancock teachers. They did the curriculum piece, and Marisa Forrester, who did the swim piece. So it just ended. They had a wonderful.
And they're giving their time to do that.
Absolutely.
The teachers, so
Yes.
very grateful.
Okay, another one that is this girl focus, this Girls Rising, what can we do to empower ourselves, is the Point Webster Q-GEMS. Their name stands for Quincy Girls Empowered and Motivated to Succeed. They came up with that. They're currently, they work with high school students. Keith got us connected with a graphic design class where the high schoolers designed logos based on the name. And then the kids are actually going through those, and they'll be creating t-shirts. But they actually have a particular focus, which is clean water, just for this year. So they've been meeting since the beginning of February, and they'll go all the way through June. And they will actually participate in a Clean Energy Day, which is a day-long activity that we have sort of been awarded through a grant. And the Q-GEMS will participate in this. So every Thursday, they stay after school, and they either do research. They've had a guest speaker, a doctor who works with water filtration. We actually took them to MIT Water Night. Mrs. Sneller and I really had no idea what this was going to be. It was great. It actually was it was the STEM fair for the graduate students to present their thesis projects. So you see 2 of them, two of the grad students on the bottom. And it was all about water and water filtration and flooding and how to solve problems. And the MIT students engaged our students beautifully. There was also free food, not exactly what our students would be used to, sort of an Asian-infused fare that they tried out. They also, I think our Quincy students devoured the dessert table before the rest of the public could get to it. But it was just wonderful. Mrs. Sneller gave them a little tour around campus because we were early. They stayed. Our guest speaker was an astronaut who he was asked to talk about water in space. and he did a great job bringing it down to the kids' level. He had some awesome pictures from the International Space Station and some of the experiments the astronauts did with water and how it reacts in space versus how it reacts. And then there were some actual MIT scientists there doing some of the demonstrations on equipment or models that they've actually designed. So it was a wonderful evening. It wasn't just the Q Gems you can see Point Webster Robotics and some of the 7th grade science students who also attended. This year we're going to bring Operation Day's Work, which is happening at Broad Meadows. It's been long-standing at Broad Meadows. It aligns beautifully with the grade 8 Girl Rising unit because the philosophy is very similar, and that is that it takes one person to enact change for the better. And being a global citizen makes us smarter, kinder, and proactive. So if we're doing things for others, we are making our local community that much better. And this year, ODW actually selects the focus area, and so, or the organization, and it's American Foundation for Children with AIDS. And the Broad Meadows Club, which is about 50 strong, has already done some fundraising for this organization. They held a Halloween dance. I think they've done some sort of, well, if you're a wellness person, some candy bake sales sort of after school.
Don't tell school committee about that.
Yes, yes. So, but they are raising money for the construction of a greenhouse in Zimbabwe in this particular village, so that the village can sustain their own food source. And actually where it is specifically is at an orphanage for children who have been orphaned from parents who have died from AIDS. So it's this idea that you're helping kids your age, you're trying to empathize and understand what they're going through. They don't necessarily need tablets, iPads, things like that. They need food and water. And so that's what the Broad Meadows students are focusing on. And then here's our Girl Rising Grade 8. Elise Higgins Steele is actually going to be presenting next week at the Massachusetts Reading Association. This is the title slide of her presentation. This is wonderful. She was one of hundreds of proposals for the MRA conference, and hers was selected. So she'll be doing an hour-long presentation. This is held right in Quincy at the Marriott. We are still working with the Girl Rising Foundation about some funding for year 3. It doesn't seem to be coming as readily as it did the first 2 years or last year, but we are moving forward. So we're expanding the Girl Rising unit across all 5 middle schools, and we'd like you to save the date, May 30th, where we're going to have a community celebration at Quincy High School, where we're going to get the kids out of their own schools, come together so they can see some of each other's projects. We're also going to have a panel. Casey Freed Jennings, we're hoping, will be there as well. And so we sort of want to take that next step from what you're doing in your school to sort of a community action. And if you haven't seen the documentary Girl Rising, I strongly recommend that you do that. And then the last group that I wanted to bring up was the Girl Up. Now this actually has been around for many years. There is an active group at Quincy High School. It's open to North Quincy High as well, but it's held, the monthly meetings are held at Quincy High School. There's 24 students, 20 female, 4 boys. They are tied to the Boston chapter, and so the Boston chapter, with input from the district Girl Up, they pick up an area to fundraise for, to research. And this year, they have actually did some fundraising for bicycles for students, for girls who don't have the transportation to make it to school. So the schooling is available to them in an underdeveloped country, however, they can't get there from the village they live in. So the Girl Up Coalition did a fundraiser around that, and so our Quincy team was part of that. But I brought them up specifically because they're going to be tied and mentoring our 8th grade students as they work on their Girl Rising projects in May and June. And we're going to have a few of them become part of the panel in the community celebration on May 30th. So there's a lot of wonderful things going on. There's more here than I've given you a taste of. I'd love to give you an update soon on the Girls Who Run Club at Montclair, because now that the spring is coming, marathon season's coming up, I don't know what they're preparing for, but I'll let you know. But it's sort of, it's taking hold. And again, not just for girls, but the idea is that we want to make sure that our girls have the opportunity to understand that they can take a leadership role in their building, in areas that matter to them, that we can connect them to, either through science, social studies, current events, things like that. So we hope to give you a highlight of a few others in the near future. Thank you.
Any other question? I have a quick one. Are all of the middle schools using Girls Rising now?
Well, so this is our third year, and so what our plan is that we're going to have participation from all 5 middle schools. The participation may not be as big as what Ms. Higgins-Steele is doing, but it will be in some way, and we'll have representation at the community event.
And it's all 8th grade?
It's all 8th grade, because the subject matter can be a little intense. It goes from, it's all about the need to educate these young women in underdeveloped countries, because that's what breaks the cycle of poverty. But with the poverty comes all these other social ills. And the kids, the 8th graders, do learn about that. They learn statistics, they read stories out of the book, they see snippets from the film. So just 8th grade for that.
So my other question was, I know you said something about the funding, but what does the funding cover for this? I mean, it's not really an expensive.
It's not. It's the books, those beautiful books. My goal is to get those in every classroom. And I know we'll succeed at doing that this month. We had also built into our proposal that one of the initiatives is this connection to technology and this ability to Skype with schools and students in these countries. And so I'd like to get each of the 8th grade teachers a webcam and the microphone, so that they certainly can pull up the Skype software, but to sort of complete the package so they can do that. And you're right. And then for the community event, in terms of refreshments, things like that, we'll take care of that internally.
And part of the idea is to make it powerful, make it meaningful, but also make it sustaining. And that's the piece. You don't want to overload it with funding, and then it all of a sudden disappears. It'll be sustaining.
Very good, thank you.
Could I just ask, do you know what the current funding level is for the program?
Well, there really is no, what we got last year for the grant, we didn't actually get money. What we got was a set of classroom books for every group that was participating, so that was 3 middle schools. We got the DVD, we got the license to show the DVD for free, so they waived that price. We also got the curriculum that was developed by George Washington University. We got the full curriculum, not just a sample that's online. And yeah, that's what it was.
Thank you.
I suppose I could ask for an itemization. I think through the grant, we have such a wonderful relationship with the Girl Rising group now that I think they can get us a reduced price on the book versus if you were to buy it on Amazon.com. A much reduced price.
Can I ask?
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Did you say this is during class time or after class or both?
It's an English language arts unit. So it's built into the English language arts, and then the social studies teacher typically plays a role in some way, as well as the art teacher, and in some cases the music teacher. So MCAS is over, the kids still have a good month, 6 weeks, month and a half, and we want them engaged and reading, writing, speaking and listening, using their vocabulary, and so this is a choice to adopt the unit.
For the teachers?
For the teachers, yeah.
Understood. And do you get these like every year? You get different types of initiatives or choices that you evaluate, or is it just based on the grant?
I think the initiatives come internally. These are based on needs assessment, priority areas, and then we certainly keep an eye out for grants that align to those initiatives. In this case, the Girl Rising was really just a fluke. They found Elise through what she was putting online as to what her kids were doing. They chose to partner with Quincy. So this is sort of unique. I've never, this is the first time I've had this opportunity where it came from the outside in like that.
So it's just a different vehicle to teach the curriculum?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. It still meets all the reading, writing standards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just-
And it's a choice. The teacher doesn't have to do it. We have one teacher who's going to join this year, and she's going to use a book she's already designated for the end of the year, which is I Am Malala. And she will infuse some of the philosophies of the Girl Rising grant into her unit.
Yeah, I know so little about what's required. I mean, I know there's so many things that are required. It's a crowded curriculum, it's a busy day, there's no time for anything new. So I'm just trying to educate myself as to how things like this that crop up, how they're compatible with everything.
Right, so these teachers work out at integrating with,
To make sure.
so things are covered the way they should be covered.
Yeah.
And then you'll hear, even through our digital literacy and computer science, there's actually some wonderful crossovers there in terms of implementing the technology. So there's a lot of integration. Not so much a particular focus, a topic, like in math or science, that they have to make sure that they complete by the end of the year.
Mhm.
It's all about those language, reading, and writing skills.
Thank you.
Okay, we move on to the advanced pathways.
Okay, so for the Advanced Pathways update, our focus for the Advanced Pathways ELA, the focus is still on the next generation assessment. So when our teachers, our middle school and high school teachers get together to talk about what the curriculum is for these identified advanced learners, how can we improve it, how can we differentiate. For ELA, the middle school teachers are amazed at the kind of writing that they're doing at the high school in the advanced courses. And so they feel that they need a better alignment to what they're doing to prepare the kids for that. The high school English teachers of advanced are amazed at the integrated units the 8th grade ELA teachers are doing. So they're very interested in learning more about the novels that they're choosing, because middle school has a wider scope of what they're selecting. So there's a nice relationship going on between the 8th, 9th, and 10th grade teachers around ELA. I think our high school teachers have an excellent grasp on the requirements that are needed for advanced coursework, AP coursework, and of course, the AP exams, or even SAT or ACT if you think about that. So the writing continues to be our focus for the advanced pathways. I also think, remember, high school's going to be moving to next generation MCAS in 2019. So the 9th and 10th grade teachers are very interested in learning from the 8th grade teachers how they're preparing their students, not only for the computer-based test, but for this idea that they are, as Bridget has talked about, they are reading and responding to multiple texts or triplings even. That was a new idea to the high school teachers. So there's a great way to learn from each other in those committees. The Advanced Science Pathways team just finished implementing their newly designed STEM placement test for 8th grade. The group poured over the results. I was really impressed with the conversations that they had, not only in designing the questions, but the item analysis that they had afterwards. The Advanced Pathways team took recommendations from colleagues about the course design, and then of course the science teachers completed their course recommendations in 8th grade for high school. So there was a great conversation. I think, Ed, we saw one comment from a middle school teacher that said this was one of the most effective years in making my course recommendations that I've had. This idea with so many conversations with the high school teachers and having the placement test. Differentiation for an advanced learner, capable of reading complex technical text and being able to write about it or to handle a lab. That's something that the Advanced Science Pathways team is also focusing on. The Advanced Math Pathways team also contributed to the STEM placement design. They analyzed the results and they actually made a number of recommendations for version 2 of the assessment for next year. The primary focus for this team continues to be the rigorous pacing for advanced math students. The year just isn't long enough to get us compressed standards and then to fly through them at a rate that's deep enough for understanding. So we're constantly fighting that battle. So that remains the issue, pacing. And they've actually, this year, the middle school teachers, based on feedback from the high school teachers, they actually made some changes in their pacing guide for the first time in 3 years. And that's good. They should feel that that pacing guide should evolve. It should be ever changing to meet the needs of the students. So that continues to be meeting the pacing and the rigor of the math curriculum continues to be a big focus of the Advanced Pathways team.
Question, anybody else have a question? Did they also use the assessment results to inform curriculum? Instruction? I mean, like, if there was a group of kids that were just not making you know what I'm talking about.
I do.
So did they use that not just to place kids, but to inform the teacher about how the content was being delivered and whether or not it was being delivered on the issues?
There were some great, conversations. I think the STEM placement test gave the 8th grade team a lot of input that normally in these type of meetings, it sort of comes down from the high school. So they talked a lot about when they teach concepts and how the high school has to be patient because there are certain skills that need to be mastered before they can move on to another concept. We did give the placement test in February. The science teachers were more comfortable with that than the math teachers were.
It's pretty early.
Yeah. So I'm not sure it impacted, it informed their curriculum in terms of time of year, expectations, what they want to accomplish prior to MCAS, not the STEM, not the placement test.
And maybe instructional strategies, or do they talk about that? Like if some schools or some folks are having more trouble with the content?
Yes, there was some talk about that. I thought it had more to do with the struggle to keep up with the pacing. So here it was January, February, maybe they hadn't met an important benchmark. So I heard less about the kids not being able to do it and more about when we were getting to it.
And
That's where I was going, okay.
That's the next step as well, is working with the teachers to look at the results. This year was test design, help with the placement. And the placement test results came in before the teacher recommendations. And in past years, the test results have come after the teacher recommendations. So then they're working with the guidance counselors and teachers to make changes as appropriate. But now it's all in.
And does it always have to be that early? Does it have to be that early? I mean,
To fit the scheduling
when
timeline
does the scheduling take place for 8th to 9th grade?
right now.
Beginning of March it starts.
Another ugly MCAS test. You're getting the results before you have to finish teaching the content.
However, in this case, we can have input on our design. And we actually will be making a few changes.
There will be changes from, there were major changes from last year to this year, and there'll be some changes from this year to next year, both in science and math. But overall.
So in sequencing of the units as well as,
Or what's being tested. So we don't want the test to drive the curriculum, but we can modify the test to assess the curriculum that's been covered.
we would like the assessment to inform the curriculum, right?
Correct.
Anybody else? Thank you very much. I'm very happy about this whole thing.
You said there were major changes to the classification tests. Did you see more students scoring highly on the test? Does it change the number of students who would classify in different, levels of competency?
I'm trying to remember what I said. Did I say there were more changes to the classification or the results?
I
The categories?
thought it was
Oh,
classification.
So the test itself was redeveloped this year
Right.
to assess critical thinking, inquiry-based skills, rather than content in specifically earth science or biology or chemistry, to better assess a student whether they're prepared for an advanced level science course, whether it be advanced earth science or advanced biology. We're looking for the inquiry skills, and that's really what we tried to test and assess
Okay.
this year as a part of this.
So just a refinement of how you score that.
Correct.
Yeah, how do we access the parochial private kids that are coming from 8th grade up to the high schools, is there any vehicle where, well, they are, is the placement just based on the teacher recommendation from
That's a great question. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to it. I know from the math department chairs that a September first week of school placement test is always given. And they feel they need that to measure summer drop, as well as I think it captures some of those private school students. But I can find out more information about that.
Yeah, I don't know how do we get, I'd like to get all of them. But, just curious about that.
Well, good, thank you. It's great that they're in play. I'm so happy that those 3 courses are in play in middle school across the board. It's really wonderful. So thank you. We can move on to digital literacy.
Okay. At our last teaching and learning subcommittee meeting, we were talking that we were involved in unpacking this new curriculum. And keyboarding also came up, and so we have some new information for you. And so what we'd like to do is talk about this new set of standards, this curriculum. We'd like to unpack it at the elementary, middle, and high school level, give you a sense of what's in here, what these learning expectations, what the state is asking us to do with students. And then we have an update for you on how that pertains to keyboarding, which actually is a small part of this whole framework. So, Mitchell Chester, our former commissioner, who has recently passed away, he was very much involved in this transition from the technology standards, which we had previously been referring to, and to making this new framework, and actually by making it a curriculum framework, would elevate its importance in terms of how these standards are integrated throughout K-12. The vision for this whole document basically boils down to for students to have the ability to effectively use, program, and create technology to solve complex problems of the 21st century. So you can see that connection to college career readiness, you can see that connection to the workforce. I think when I was starting to teach, it was probably more about using technology. And now the wording is use, program, and create to solve problems. So there is a very definitive vision behind this set of standards. They articulate learning outcomes for kindergarten through 12. I'm surprised they left off the pre-K, since we have pre-K using technology as we speak. So the standards represent the core elements, and it's this idea very similar to the frameworks that Massachusetts already has in place, in that it's rigorous, it's coherent, and it's vertically aligned. In terms, when you see the whole binder, the binder with a lot of sort of supplementary, there's an appendix, there's introductions, there's some guiding principles, but it really basically comes down to the fact that we have a vision, we've got learning standards, which are outcomes for students to know and be able to do. They've broken it out into 4 grade spans, and they've given us 4 strands: computing and society, digital tools and collaboration, computing systems, and computational thinking. And every level has learning outcomes assigned to those. And then they have those practices and habits of mind of what they think a good computer scientist or user of technology would have, similar to what we have in math. Just like any of the frameworks, any of the new curriculum initiatives that we tackle here in Quincy Public Schools, it really does take a village. There are a lot of teams that need to have input and make contributions to how we will roll out and implement these standards. And so, you know, we want the academic classroom teachers involved, the academic program teachers. This is going to impact them on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. SLT and principals teams. It's a curriculum. Some of these things are already embedded in the curriculum that we provide the the students, which is refreshing, that's good to know. We also want you involved, and of course, Keith's technology planning and training team will have a very big part in the rollout and the support of teachers. Okay.
Thank you, Maddie. So, as Maddie mentioned, there are 4 strands, and so I'm just gonna talk with you a little bit about what, this might mean for children in grades K to 2, and then also in grades 3 to 5. So, under the computing and society strand, some things that, you may see children in those grade levels covering or working on are like understanding that passwords help you protect privacy. They'll be learning things like how to unplug or plug in and care for devices and technology, being able to define good citizenship as using technology safely, responsibly, and ethically, identify and describe how people, and that could be students, parents, policemen, firemen, first responders, and ambulance drivers, EMTs, use many types of technology in their daily life. So those are just some examples under the computing and society strand about some things that they might be working on in kindergarten through grade 2. So in digital tools and collaboration, they'll be learning how to operate and use digital tools, and what that means is things like learning how to open and close things, find documents on the computer, save and print. They'll begin to locate and use things like the space bar, shift and delete on a keyboard, creating simple artifacts, and using digital tools to communicate and exchange information with teachers or also to present to others. So some of the things that they'll be working on, you may see if you walk into a classroom that they'll be working on in those grade levels. In the computing systems strand, they'll be working on identifying different kinds of devices like laptops, tablets, and smartphones, why you would use each individual one. Recognize that some tasks are best completed by humans, and others might be by computing devices. So learning how to do things like turn on and off the computer, use a mouse, use a keyboard or a touch screen, or launch a program are some of the things that they would be, just to clarify what that strand means, that they'd be working on that strand. In computational thinking in grades K to 2, they will be defining an algorithm as a sequence of defined steps. Create a simple algorithm individually or collaboratively. For instance, and this, just as like a simple example of what that means to create an algorithm, could be making a sandwich. Following those directions and putting that sandwich together is a simple version that you could do in kindergarten or 1st or 2nd grade that is actually creating an algorithm. Or using your body or a storyboard. And we actually, when we did our coding week that we had in the elementary school, lots of our kindergarten, 1st grade, and 2nd grade classrooms actually did these things where they used their bodies. And one of the students would be like the avatar or whatever. And by the way that they turned, the student would turn. So they used kind of created like a human code. So there's ways that you can do it without it being completely overwhelming to our youngest learners. And explain that computers can save information and it can be retrieved and shared. Define a computer program as a set of commands created by people to do something. So these are some of the things that they would be working on in computational thinking in our grades. So in 3 to 5, under computing and society, they would be working on identifying appropriate uses of technology. For example, when posting to social media, sending emails or browsing the internet or texting, talking about that safe use of computers and technology. This standard also covers safe practices for the internet and downloading information, as well as cyberbullying would be a focus of this standard. It includes understanding how technology can influence people through things like ads, games, banners, all those things that kind of pop up when you're on the computer. And in the digital tools and collaboration, this standard involves such things as, or strand involves such things as communicating key ideas and details, either individually or collaboratively, that inform, persuade, and entertain using digital tools. Also using digital tools to perform searches and locate information. creating artifacts that answer research questions and communicating ideas, so a little bit higher level than what you heard in the K-2 standard. And this is also where we see the reference to typing, and it does specify for grade 5 up to 25 words per minute. In the computing systems, they'll be identifying the purpose for various devices, for instance, a computer versus a smartphone or a tablet, explain advantages and limitations of technology, for example, the use of spell checker, which can be a great resource and can check thousands of words faster than a human can, obviously. But a computer may not know the difference when you're writing between underserved or undeserved, and it can very much depend on the author's intent of what they're writing. So teaching children to recognize that spell check is a great help, but it's not always correct, and you need to be able to recognize that. And then on the computational thinking, they'll be working on organizing information to make it more useful, like using tables and graphs and spreadsheets, creating simple models of things, like a model of the solar system or the water cycle, and explain what the model shows or does not show, and also collecting and manipulating data to organize it into graphs, analyzing that data, and working on things like spreadsheets and Excel and things like that. So just some of the things that we're already working on, and I think you've heard us talk a little bit about some of these things at other teaching and learning subcommittees. So we're already working on things like online responsibility and internet safety, within our school day. Children are already working on web browsing and how to do that safely and responsibly, and recognizing what sites are good sites and not good sites. And then, completing online assessments. Thank you so much, because you supported the MAP, and we're doing that in all the elementary schools and middle schools. They're definitely using the mouse and working the keyboard, using keyboarding skills, taking care of the equipment and understanding the system in order to troubleshoot during class or at home. So, we are very fortunate to have the support with the Chromebooks, so learning how to appropriately put those away into the carts, making sure that they're plugged in, each day after their use, and that they're charged, and just that, caring for this equipment that you have, and the mayor have graciously supported. Using how to use the printer, coding, as I gave an example, all the way down into our little ones that are using their whole body to code, up to children that are actually creating simple codes and moving avatars on the computer. I think you heard Nick Ahern talk about that in the last meeting. And exploring online tools and search engines for research projects and things like that. Building PowerPoint presentations, our students are working on learning how to do that. And using the tablets with partners or independently to do that research. Creating audiobooks and investigating basic data sources for problem solving. So these are all things that are already happening either in the classroom or in the library support time, or when the teachers bring the children down to the media center or use the Chromebook, things like that. So this information, although the digital learning standards are new to us in 2016, this information, or some of this information, was already present in the ELA and literacy frameworks, which we've been implementing for years. Thank you, Maddie, for modeling. So where we see these kind of references to the digital learning standards or this use of technology is, in the Common Core on page 17, you can see the example that we have out there, that students will use technology and digital media strategically and capably. So this is taken right out of our ELA framework. So years before this ever came into existence, this was already in our ELA standards. And there are definitely connections between the digital learning standards and the ELA literacy anchor standards. And again, where we see this is in the writing. So we have W6 up there, which pertains to collaboration, and W7 and 8, which also pertain to research. So in those anchor standards are already references to using technology to collaborate and to complete research and gather information and present and things like that. and just some examples of what that looks like. So these are the writing standards, and you see some examples from grade 3, 4, and 5. And you can see how they build. So in grade 3, use technology to produce and publish writing using keyboarding skills. So already introducing keyboarding skills in grade 3, as well as to interact and collaborate with others. So already using those things to produce published writing, practicing their keyboarding, and working with others while using these digital learning tools. In grade 4, it gets a little bit more in-depth, using technology, including current web-based communication platforms to produce and publish writing, as well as to interact with others. And now we get up to demonstrating keyboarding skills to type a minimum of 1 page in one sitting. So that has been in place in our ELA standards since we have been implementing them. In grade 5, again, just a little bit more intense. Now we have, again, using it in the web-based communication platforms and to produce and publish writing and interact and collaborate with others. But now in grade 5, we're up to 2 pages in a single setting. So these things were already in our ELA standards. So there definitely, is some correlation between these new standards and the standards that we've already been implementing for ELA.
Thank you. So in terms of the middle school for grades 6 to 8, we go from learning the basics to actually utilizing what we've learned to do some more in-depth projects. So for the computing and society, this is where we're doing a lot about safety online. And not only how to be a responsible online citizen, but how to keep yourself safe and what some of the dangers could be. And between the guidance, the health teachers, the library media specialists, as well as classroom teachers, the idea of cyberbullying is addressed at the middle school. So responsible use of technology and the consequences that come out from inappropriate use. They also spend, throughout 6 through 8, they are constantly talking about trying to evaluate digital bias. What's true, what's not, what's fake, what's true. If you read it online, does that necessarily mean that's what you should put in your writing, citing as fact? If you're reading something in a text from a friend, does that necessarily mean that it's true? So a lot of that conversation is going on. For digital tools and collaboration, it's using the variety. It's really beginning to expand and go out of the basics and produce artifacts. So when DZ talks about artifacts, that's what we know as assignments and projects and performance-based learning. What that thing is that they are going to show their teacher, that they're going to show their classmates to demonstrate their understanding and their learning. They also, for digital tools and collaboration, the state would like them to really push and learn about online surveys, how to communicate with others to get information, so not just passively reading, but actually interacting and collecting information, and maybe even get to the point where you publish something online as a class, as a collaboration, as an after-school program, and learn and apply your advanced research skills, and learn how to correctly cite your sources. For computing systems, learning to troubleshoot hardware, software problems, use a variety of computing devices, which our students already do, understand what network components do and how specific functions connect devices, people, and services. So a lot of sort of the guiding principles they talk about in the standards is that this idea that technology should benefit us in our relationships, so we need to understand that, how it connects us, and how perhaps companies, retailers are trying to connect with us and for what reason. And then for their computational thinking, again, algorithms, basic programs, not just looking at data, but manipulating it or creating it for a research project. Describe how machines and humans interact to solve problems. So there's your innovation in technology, and identify capabilities of devices that enable companies to provide services. So again, I think the idea here is getting kids to, this is their introduction to start thinking about careers and companies and what they do and what service they provide. And that's not just about downloading music and listening to music, that there's so much more about that. Navigation, yes?
I just asked a question, whether it's 3 to 5 or 6 to 8, which class at which grade level teaches all these things?
Well, all we're doing right now is we're unpacking what the state has outlined for us.
You're saying these are what